brief introduction on how the testing works, because you may not do the direct testing part, but you will be supporting the testers or developers most of the time with your requirement analysis, and wherever they need, you might be giving more explanations into your user stories. So there will be like three stages of testing. First one will be unit test. Second one, system and integration test. Use and third one is user acceptance testing. I might have touched these topics in the beginning of the tutorial itself, but yeah, what unit test means is when the developer understands the code, understand the requirements, and starts writing his code and implements his code, he has to make sure that the requirements or the user story and the acceptance criteria are working fine in his local. Local means local is his system. Before deploying into any development or QA or sit environments, he will be coding it in his local system. So in his local system, he will be doing the unit testing, and he will make sure that all the features are working and the all acceptance criteria is met before sending it to any environment for further testing purposes. So usually 100% of the time unit test will be carried out by the developer who is assigned to that particular requirement, or in agile methodology a story card. Okay, and after that, once the developer is satisfied with the output of his coding and he feels that every aspect of the requirement is working fine, then he pushes it to dev environment, and from there to the QA environment. So in the QA environment, the QA testers come into picture. Okay. So system testing is done by the QA testers to ensure that the system does what the requirement specifies. So this will be functional testing, performance testing, and installation testing. So functional testing means to make sure all the functional requirements are the user stories or acceptance criteria are met, and this is the actual testing which is done to make sure the end product is working as per the user story or the requirements documented by the business analysis. Performance testing is like this is a different aspect of testing, where the performance testers are a different team who will subject the system to high volumes of transactions or high volumes of stress, and make sure that the system is in a position to handle the high stress. There, let's say there are public facing websites where there is a traffic of like 1,000 people every day. Then the performance testers will make sure that the website is hitting more than 1,000 users, or at least 1,000 users a day, and how the system is behaving, how the system will behave if it is more than 1,000, if it is 100 1,100 users, how the system will behave. And such kind of criteria they will incorporate in their test design to make sure the system will act properly when the performance is reached to its peak stage as well. Okay, installation testing means this will be usually done at the high level after installing the complete product at the client place. And when it is done, usually user acceptance testing will cover this as well. But yeah, this will not be separately tested or separately done in most of the projects. Okay. So integration testing. So as I was telling you guys earlier, so when separate modules of the application or different parts of the application are clubbed together, how the system is behaving. So in agile scrum methodology, the team will be delivering like different parts of the application, right? So in sprint 1 you will be delivering 4 user stories. In sprint 2, let's say you delivered another 6, and in and third sprint you delivered another 10 user stories. So total so everything might be working properly when tested individually, but when if you are clubbing together all and testing together, we should be making sure that nothing which was implemented in sprint 1 or 2 was broken by the parts which were implemented in sprint 3. So integration test comes into picture in those scenarios to test all the functionalities or user stories clubbed together. And if there is any existing application and if you are adding features to that, then as I told you guys, it will be regression testing, where you will test to see if the new features have blended correctly into the system, or they are broken, or they have broken any existing functionality, or they are working properly or not with the existing system. Okay. User acceptance testing or user acceptance testing is usually done by the business people with the help of business analysts. So business analysts will coordinate with the actual business stakeholders to design this user acceptance testing, and actual business people who are part of the application, the client will deploy a team to do this. They'll select few members, core members, who are part of the users from real world, and they will be testing this and performing this user acceptance testing to make sure that in the business perspective the system is working properly and all their requirements are incorporated properly into the system, and make sure that nothing has been missed. So if anything is found out in user acceptance testing, usually this will go to the change control board, because it will affect the timeline of the project, because usually this user acceptance testing will be done at the end of the project. Both in waterfall and agile methodologies, user acceptance testing will be done at the end of the project once almost all the sprints are completed. In waterfall, anyway, whole application will be delivered at once and it will be tested by the end users in UAT testing at the end. But in agile methodology also, even if you have workable parts of software every sprint, the UAT will be conducted before release of the whole software, at the end of all sprints. Okay. So inputs and outputs for testing. Usually the inputs for the testing is like, with the knowledge you have till now, you can just tell this. The inputs for the testing will be the requirements and acceptance criteria, and your acceptance criteria forms the basis for testing people to write their test design and test cases. So we should be able to clearly define the acceptance criteria for all the user stories, or else we will have to do a lot of work in the end explaining the testing team and dev team again. To avoid any last minute surprises, it should always be better to do a good research and completely write down the acceptance criteria in a detailed manner and support with your diagrams wherever necessary. Okay. And yeah, the change request also, sometimes the change request will, these also will be different story cards. If any change request is approved by the board, it will come to the business analysis. You will create a story card, or scrum master will create a story card. You will work on the requirements, write the user stories, and then pass it on to the dev team, so, and tester team. So change requests also form the input for the testing team. So SRS means software requirement specifications. These will be developed by the system analyst usually, and this will contain more technical terminology than the functional requirements. So design documents also, the technical team or architect team will be designing the design documents, giving the business level overall views of the process flows and everything, and the technical flows. And these might contain the database structures, how the database interacts with the UI and everything. So sometimes testers might need this when they are testing some complex technical aspects of the system. So and programs and modules. Anyway, the developers will write the programs and depending on the modules. These modules is a term which was used when waterfall methodology was used, but no one uses it now because everything will be in epics and user stories. Earlier, it used to be the whole application used to be divided into modules, and each module will be developed separately and clubbed together at the end. So, but now we'll have epics and user stories in Agile Scrum methodology. So for testing, the outputs will be their test documents, the test design, test plan, and test cases, procedures. So sometimes in some companies, it's a norm for the business analyst to review the test cases or test design. Whenever you complete a user story and hand it over to the testers, they write the test design documents and test cases, and once they are done with it, they'll send a copy to you and the scrum master, and you will be required to review the test cases and see that everything from your acceptance criteria or the user story was covered in the test design document and test cases. Okay, and defect list and test report. So defect list means if any test case is failed or any feature is not working properly, as I showed you in Jira yesterday, you will be the tester will be creating a bug or defect in the Jira, and that will be again a deliverable or output for the QA team. So in case sometimes you might have to analyze those defects and help the developer fix those defects, provide more information and talk to business again to get the more information and clarify if there is anything missing. And testers will always provide a test report, like if they have 20 test cases for a user story, they have to record the test report, how many passed and how many failed and how many defects are raised, etc. While in the scrum meetings or the defect triage meetings, and they'll be responsible for all these input and outputs. And our responsibility, as I was telling you from the beginning, we are the owner of the requirements, and whatever the requirements are there and whatever the user stories are there, we will be the sole owner of them. Okay, and these output documents, testers are the owners for this. So testing types. So functional testing, user interface means layout, like the exact graphical user interface, UI, what the user exactly interacts with the system, where will he enter the information and how will he get the output back on the screen. They are called user interface, and this is one kind of testing. But usually in most of the projects it will be integrated into the functional testing. If we are adding any fields or removing any fields, it all will be covered in the functional testing. You will not be separately doing user interface testing again. I mean the testers, not you. So performance testing, I was explaining you a little bit earlier, right? So it is used to test the load and stress on the application when more number of users are using it or more data is thrown at the system. How will it behave? Okay, and access control and security test. So this will be done mostly by the DevOps teams to make sure that all the access protocols are working properly, which team has which access to the system, and the security test is also done by the security teams, where they'll search for the look out for the vulnerabilities from the internal factors as well as the external factors like hackers or someone. Okay, and regression testing, yeah, as I told you, when you have a running existing application in production, and if you are adding new features to it or fixing something in it, the regression test is to make sure that nothing from the existing system is broken or nothing from the new functionality is broken when it is added to the existing system. Okay, so these are different types of testing techniques and methods. We don't need to go much into much detail about this. Just for your idea, I'm just going to go through these slides. So White box testing is nothing but like it tests the individual and independent parts and individual requirements, and black box testing is it focuses more on the functional requirements of the software. So functional requirements means how the system should behave and how the system should interact with the users. Okay, and as you see in the bullets, white box testing exercise all the logical decisions on their true or false. So any if else statements, true or false sides of this, and exercise internal data structures as well to assure their validity. I don't know what that line means as well, but just for your information, I'm just going through this testing techniques. So this is test process in a nutshell. So testing planning, create test plan. This will be done by the testing team lead, and test preparation, study the requirements, then design the test, develop test cases, test scripts, and test scripts is the terminology which is used for automation testing, where they use different automation software to run the test cases. And test scenarios is a word which is used when you are doing manual testing. And reiterate this, when you are implementing a product, 90% of the time they will be using manual test cases and not the automated test cases. But when it is a application development software, like developed using Java or .NET, in those cases most of the time automation testing is used, and tools like Selenium, Cucumber are used for automation testing. So you should just have an idea of what automation testing is and what manual testing is, but not any like hands-on experience or detailed exposure to that. So just knowledge of testing process is fine, and after that you will go into the test execution phase, where the testers will perform the testing. If they encounter any bugs or defects, they report it. Developers and BS work together to fix those bugs. Then bug tracking is nothing but just making sure that all the bugs are resolved in time, and then the test report is submitted with all the passed and failed test cases. So data analysis means sometimes, as I told you earlier, we might need more insight into those defects, right? So a BA might be needed to analyze the root cause of the defects. If it is a requirement mistake, or if it is a dev mistake, or if it is a miss in the requirement when business was handing over the requirements to us, we need to analyze it as a BA and hand over the root cause to the developer. And if it is a business miss, we go back to business and clarify the things. If it is a dev code miss, then yeah, developer will be fixing it. Okay, so this is all about testing in a nutshell. Understand the principles of plan and design, concepts of test case design, and the test cases. Tuesday onwards, we'll continue with the insurance topics, and after that, we'll go into the guidewire application. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Sure thing, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So if everything is good, then yeah, I'll call it a day.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Yeah, we'll meet again on Tuesday with core insurance topics. Okay.